Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 391, The Uncaused Being and the Criterion of Truth. Now this is basically a proposition and answer style logical work with philosophical meanderings, taking off of others like Spinoza and Haeckel, and in part was a response to William James' material on the subject. Effectively, one part of it is first to try to categorize the uncaused being. Well, is it the universe was uncaused? Is there a God that was outside of cause? Is there a group of gods? Or something else like pluralism, which is, in the end, spoiler alert, sort of the proposition that's made that monotheism in the strict sense does not actually make as much sense as polytheism in some cases. It's an interesting work, fits in with pagan ideology, arguably more than certain Judeo-Christian concepts. Now, link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. It is 87 pages, so it's on the short intermediate end. Second and third links to my books blogs. The only thing, arguably, that's roughly similar to this was one that I wrote long ago. Again, you can get it in the My Works category there, called The Occult Nature of God, where I sort of created 8 possible archetypal categories of deity that could exist, according to 3 limiting factors. It's not comparable to this work fully, but is well received. Quite a few people have actually gotten copies of it. I'll be releasing new editions of all of my own works over the coming years, by the way, along with many, many other things. Many new works, many compilations. Maybe go back to single editing works like these. Still not sure, again, as I said earlier this morning. This would be a highly recommended work if you're into logic. Because while the proposition is strictly spiritual, effectively it's a work of logic, rigorous intellectual discourse, and philosophical analysis. So it's talking about this. The central theme is the concept of the uncaused being. Is there anything uncaused? Various propositions. What is uncaused? The nature of God, effectively, or of the absence thereof. You could have an atheistic system and say the universe was uncaused. This is not granted as fact in this particular work. I would also like to point out that a few of the scientific propositions, like the usage of electrons and ether and some of these other concepts that were in vogue at the time, they fall flat now because they're not really used for proof, so it doesn't rip apart the arguments at any fundamental level. But the concept of the atom as people in the late 19th, early 20th centuries envisioned it, with the electron as the lowest common denominator, unsplittable, is now, of course, considered to be false. The concept of an ether in space through which things is moving as opposed to a true vacuum. You can still have a debate if you believe in certain aspects of quantum theory, I suppose, but in the general sense, there's no like gas or anything holding the universe together. So it's interesting altogether. I remember studying logic when I was at Castleton State, now Castleton State University. Got over a 100 in the course. Not sure exactly how I did it because it's rather dry mathematics. I like things that have this kind of dialogue in them, that make propositions and attempt to flesh them out. I may not always agree with what is proposed and say, well, you've got a problem with your proposition itself being false, or you haven't given any evidence that your proposition should be actually utilized. That can be an issue. And I may not agree with the result of the philosophical meanderings, like that there's a pluralistic deity or something. I don't accept that. I'm more apatheistic. But it's interesting anyway. And again, it gets into certain other philosophers that have weighed in on things at least related to the topic. So I would highly recommend it if you're into the more dense academic philosophical side of things. If you're more into like the folkloric compilations and black magic and stuff and, that sort of thing, or even like the anthropological end, I would probably skip this one in all honesty. Although if you wanted to buy Occult Nature of God, that makes me happy because, again, wrote it years and years ago when I was still a fresh-faced, fair young lad, and, it's very, very funny. So anyway, again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books blogs. I did have fun editing this one, although the format was maybe a little bit on the subpar side. It took a little bit longer than the average work when I was going through it line by line proofreading, to tell the truth. That's about all. Peace out.